Casey, I am so excited to have you on here. You have been so transformative to my business and even my life through the work that I've done in your course and coaching. I would love for you to start with just a little intro. How long have you been coaching on AI, and tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kristen. That means such a lot coming from you. It really warms my heart. Like we've talked about, our world is becoming more and more isolated. So to hear that this is, resonating with people is really huge. So a little bit about me. I was running a marketing agency for 10 years plus. We were about a 10 to 15 person shop, and we worked specifically with software companies, all the way from startups all the way up to Salesforce was one of our was our definitely our biggest client. And we had a lot of clients that were in the AI space. So that got me really curious about what was going on. And I started to be friends with some of these people building some of these tools. And I started to build them myself, started to build some basic neural nets. And I had some machine learning experts on staff for a little while. And we built some tools to analyze our marketing campaigns. And I became really passionate about it as, just my side project, just my hobby, I guess. And then when ChatGPT dropped, I, realized this is going to be a big deal. So I shut down the marketing agency to go full time in on AI, and I started a YouTube channel called Blazing Zebra, which is a funny name, but it's basically means that blazing, you've got to kind of move fast. You can't really sleep on this technology. And Zebra is in reference to really embracing your own unique capabilities and bringing your own humanness to the AI. Because as everybody has access to these AI systems, it's what you can bring of your core competency, your personality, all these different things that's going to set you apart in the long run. So we just had our 3-year anniversary. Blazing Zebra, 3 years, so over almost 200 videos. And really quickly after that, I began coaching people on how to use AI. And last year launched the first course. So it's been quite a fun journey. I don't know if that answers your question or
Yes,
brings up
yes.
more.
Yeah, so I started watching your YouTube videos last year sometime, and there you do such a great job of distilling information in a way that isn't overwhelming. It's step by step, very clear what to do. So I joined your course, and it was so transformative. We've talked about it, but for our listeners, the process for me was about really slowing down and looking at what, like, how do I look at the repeatable processes that I can replicate with AI, and build a system that's a foundation for the future. And that's why I've become so passionate about continuing to coach with you. And I think there was a moment that Blazing Zebra, specifically the name, was very true for me, where you said this is what this means, because I was looking at, like, what is unique about my voice, about our nonprofit, about what we're doing, that we can build with AI. And I think looking at that uniqueness and our priorities and goals has allowed me to create more meaning in our work, and scale the things that really matter versus getting lost in the noise. And what I was doing before was just constantly chasing some new thing I could try building, which is, we've built a lot of cool stuff and we'll continue to do that. But that foundation has been really transformative. So, I'd love for you to share a little bit about, what you're seeing in the world of AI that is kind of a challenge for people. And again, I know for me, it's been that, like, chasing after things. But would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I just did a survey and had hundreds of people weigh in on this feeling of overwhelm. And I've done these surveys before, but this felt different to me, that I think people that were, passionate about it in the past, and I've certainly felt this way, are now like that overwhelm is reaching a moment, tipping point in some way where we just can't keep up with all of these different tools, and it's causing all sorts of analysis paralysis. There's more and more people that are actually getting less and less done because they're falling down all these different rabbit holes of experimentation with every new tool, and they don't have like a real clear goal or purpose for what they're using this stuff for. And that's starting to rack up, especially as things are just escalating to the point where nobody can keep you up. I mean, I do this full time, and I'm in the morning when I'm working out, listening to podcasts about it, and at night doing stuff on Perplexity before bed. So it's like I'm maxing out. I think the human amount of hours that can be done, and there's tons of stuff that I'm not able to keep up with. But at the same time, now, these tools have become so powerful. I think we're reaching, like, I don't know if this happened for you, but like when the iPhone first came out, it was really exciting. And then like the next iPhone came out and it was like way better. But then like iPhone 16 comes out and it's like you can't really tell the difference quite as much. And now when these things are being released, it's like let's get the most out of, a simple tool rather than worrying about what they're capable of now. There was a new OpenAI release just like 2 days ago that you can write this huge PhD paper, blah blah blah. But it's like who really needs to do that? Like let's master, let's pick one solid good tool and go deep into that tool rather than going, an inch, into the shallow waters of hundreds of tools. Pick one or two really powerful tools, master those first, build a system around those. So you don't even really need to worry about these different headlines. You can just kind of check that off your list and be able to really intelligently understand, what updates you might need to pay attention to versus just, getting stuff done on a daily basis. These things allow us to have these almost superhuman abilities now. It doesn't make sense to keep researching them when there's one sitting right on our desktop that we're not getting the most use out of. So, um,
Yeah, one of the things I've appreciated in working with you is that you are doing a lot of that research, and I get overwhelmed so easily. This is something I talk a lot about with financial literacy because you get overwhelmed and your brain shuts down and you get burnt out and you step away. And so that has been my relationship with AI as well. And but you will go do the research, figure it out, and then you'll say you can explore this, and this is how you do this, but here's what you need to know. And I'm like, okay, just tell me what I need to know so I can build a system that works for me. So it's actually really interesting looking at the parallel between financial literacy and AI. But I'm curious, one of the things that you've taught a lot about and you're teaching in your new course is around using a system versus a tool. And I'd love for you to kind of define what that means, like using AI as a system.
yeah, so I think in its simplest form, the system is not the parts, but it's the relationship of the parts. So how these different pieces connect. And when I say parts, you immediately think of the AI tools, but there's more than that. There is, the users, the people that are using the AI tools. That's you and your team. That's the workflows and the different skills that connect these different tools. So understanding all of that in a way that scales, where you fix one problem in one place and you do it in a way that it can then, you don't have to face that problem again in any other area. You can fix something in your work or maybe in your marketing, and there's a lot of pieces of that might fit into how are we going to solve a similar problem maybe with our bookkeeping, and how are we going to solve a similar problem maybe when it comes to home maintenance or some sort of personal issues. So that's really, I guess, at the core of the system. And we're just now becoming the the new tools like Claude Cowork is allowing us to manage and own those pieces of context in a much deeper way. So these different workflows, most of them just live as files, that are just text. And, previously those were sort of locked into a custom GPT, or in some ways locked into a Claude project in these various places where the platforms were sort of owning them and controlling them. Well, that changed recently, where we can actually save these files, store them on our computer, just like regular, Word document files, and we can point whatever new system comes, or whatever new tool, whatever new model comes out, point those at these different pieces, and in that way have a lot more control of what we're doing, not only day to day, but as things evolve, we're now able to take ownership and build out these systems in ways that compound day in, get stronger and stronger day in and day out, versus, starting over when some brand new, UI drops or some brand new tool drops. You have to rebuild everything in that tool, and just knowing that 2 weeks later, the same thing's probably going to happen. So that's the big important change where this really wasn't that available or possible not that long ago. So that's kind of my big teaching, is to own as much of this information, own as many of these pieces yourself, and you don't need to. There's nothing fancy about this. You don't need to be technical to understand this type of stuff. It's fairly simple when you get down to it. But again, like keeping that out of the platforms and in your control is one of my main mantras there when we build out these systems.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, financial literacy is similar in that you are learning, like you can learn by just reading up about it or whatever. I personally cannot really. I will learn it and then it goes right out my brain. But doing it along the way and building systems and things along the way are what is going to build a foundation to build wealth or to buy a home or whatever it is. And it's felt similar with AI, where I was learning, and or doing a lot, but it wasn't sticking with me or building a foundation. So one of the things that helped me a lot early in working with you, I think it was in the course where we started going through like looking at what are the things as I'm doing it, could this have scaled or could I repeat, like is this a process I'm going to repeat, and then training AI along the way. Do you have any tips or strategies for people that are just like, they're starting from not nothing. They've played around with LLMs and they are, know a little bit about AI, but they want to build a foundation for the future, which I know is a lot of what you're teaching in your new course. But can you share like what is one thing someone should think about as they're building an effective system?
Well, something that you hinted at right there, and this is actually, it's very easy, but it's also very hard, is when you're wrapping up a session. And I guess along those lines, knowing when to wrap up a session, when you've reached a specific milestone, you might have plenty more work to do in the day, but you've wrapped up, one work segment, whether that's a piece of social media or a presentation or even just one slide or something for the presentation, and you've gone through something successfully. You've sort of hacked your way through different prompts and back and forth with it, to somehow capture that. And I do this in a few different ways. Oftentimes I'll say, let's create like just a session log of everything that we've done here, and create just a file on your computer, that just documents what was done. Then one step further, you can say, let's look at, is there anything here that we might want to capture as a repeatable workflow? And the AI is very good at saying, here's what worked, and kind of, getting out of its memory what didn't work, and just, hey, here are the 6 successful steps that we took to get to this end product. That is super helpful, whenever you come back to that particular item. But then you can even take it one step further, and sometimes generalize it and say, this is great, but if you're just doing a LinkedIn piece, maybe you can say, can we make this a little more general so that it'll work for any type of social media and email, any sort of client communication? Or sometimes I've gone through and solved a really gnarly problem, and I'll think, okay, what did we do here differently, and how can I update my problem solving skill based on what we kind of hacked through in this session? So in that way, that really is becoming the work. It is extra work for sure, but that's the work that feels more valuable to me when you think about, that the next time you come back, you won't have to do that again, especially when you own this context, and it won't be locked in a system somewhere. So that's the work that seems valuable versus, scrolling and watching many videos. And as a YouTuber, I obviously want you to watch my videos, but I also want people to stop watching videos. Like you said, people can get inundated in just consuming and not taking action, not doing. I'm just like you, where I need to be doing stuff to really learn. I think anybody really, when it gets down to it, they've got to do something with it. And it's funny, I'll hear these comments on my YouTube channel, and it's very clear that there's a lot of people out there just watching how this stuff works theoretically. Because I'm like, I know why you think it works that way, but if you really try it, it doesn't really work the way that maybe some of these other YouTubers are saying. So get out there, get your hands dirty, and then when you get something working, try to document that workflow just in a simple Word file, or a Markdown file, as we like to use as well.
Yeah, I think for me, learning how to organize, like I have all my project folders, and one is marketing, one is our advocacy work, another is our education content, and being able to direct it to that, where then I use one of your skills with a project brief, and it's like, here's what our goals are for that project, and it's aligning, it's like reading the right things, and that's the type of work that was less fun to figure out initially, of
Mm.
like, I this is not some like it's not just a giant thing of memory. It's like we're organizing what our goals are. But for me, it was about like staying very focused. So it was a bit of the AI work paired with personal business work of like, what are our goals for this? Not just creating a bunch of stuff for no reason, and or going down rabbit trails. That is something my brain loves to do. So
Right.
it's that
And it
has
can
been
feel
a very
productive
helpful.
when you're doing that
Yeah.
too, but you get back, 2 hours later and you're like, oh, that didn't work. And, but you've hinted at something major, which is the part that most people need to focus on is how to arrange those files and how to, it's called context engineering, and how to, what's the best folder structure for a particular project or for your entire knowledge base in general. And that's a big part of what we'll get into in the class. And I think that is the important work, and knowing that it's not going to be perfect, that you need to refactor it. These are all concepts that come from computer programming, because they've had to figure this stuff out a long time ago in a much more complicated way, how these different code bases connect with each other. Now we just have to do that with these simple, Word files, for lack of a better term, and how we're storing those in ways that AI can efficiently access them.
And it's about the long game. So, I
Yeah.
mean, getting to your course, and I will preface this by saying we have a lot of fantastic AI partners that are part of our First Home IQ community, and a lot of great teachers around this. But the reason why I want to really bring your work into this community is because I think that all of that can be useful if you have a good system. But if you
Right.
don't have a good system in place, then you're just constantly going to be, I don't think, very productive. You might get some cool things done here and there, but you're still going to be over exerting yourself. You're going to be chasing things that don't really matter to your ultimate, business goals. So all that to say, I would love for you to share a little bit about the course that's coming out, and just generally your focus on this long game.
Exactly. Yeah, it's called AI for the long game. And it feels to me like we're very much at this spot where we need to take this step back away from every single new tool that's coming out, every single new model update, and say, AI is going to be here for a very long time, probably for the rest of our lives. And we need to intelligently make this transition from, using it as this tool. Like I said, when ChatGPT first came out, it was something that we would go to and it was a useful resource. But now it's touching all of these areas of our lives, and it makes sense to figure out how are we going to organize this system so that we're in control of it and it's not in control of us. Because I think that's what's happening. There's a lot of, these big platforms are trying to control their users. They're trying to keep people on their platform, and there's certain simple things that we can do to build these systems that'll serve us for a very, very long time. There's just a handful of concepts in all of AI. There's the AI models, which everybody's fairly familiar with. That's the brain, the intelligence. There's the context, which we've talked a lot about. That's, the examples of your work and what you do and who you are and your workflows. There's also the user interface, the UI. So it's how the context gets into the model. There's all sorts of ways that that can work. And then there's the code, which some people are calling like the harness. This is also the things that the actions that the AI can do. Just a year or two ago, the AI was really pretty stuck in just manipulating text one way or another. But now this whole agentic revolution has happened, and the AI can now take control of your computer directly and control APIs and all these different things. So you don't need to understand all of those in a very deep way. Like you don't need to know how to build a model or build an API, but just knowing that they exist and that anything that comes out is going to have a fancy, new, weird, unique name, but it's going to be some jumble of those, four concepts. So that's the key to understanding at the system level. Building it up from the foundation like we talked about, and then knowing how to intelligently update it, what you can ignore that's coming out, and what really makes sense. If an update comes out, which will give me even deeper and faster control of my context, I'm very interested in that. But if, ChatGPT or OpenAI's new model that just released, it's supposed to be amazing, it's like I'm not going to be able to tell because I still haven't gotten to the end of, the current Claude model that I'm using. So I think I can kind of ignore that. So that's kind of a long-winded way of explaining the course, but it's kind of just taking this foundational layer, taking a step back and building up together. We're going to work through together, not just only understanding those concepts, but building them from the ground up, from zero. So this is a level for all. This is a course for all levels. If you're brand new to this stuff or you've just dabbled with the chat, you'll be fine. We have a really cool quick start to get people going, all the way to some pretty advanced stuff. We're gonna have some I call them like side quests. They're not going to be for everybody, but some things that are on the top of my mind of how we can actually get AI to be monitoring these things, monitoring the news that's coming out, monitoring the social media. So we don't even have to look at it. And then it can flag us and say, you know what, this is an update that we need to worry about in our system. And here's exactly how we're going to implement it, and getting the AI, your system, to actually start to automatically update to some degree, with obviously with you in the loop there steering it. So that's the
That's
plan.
amazing. I am very excited to attend this. I am nowhere near where I want to be in using AI, but it is, I'm at a point where I do feel like it's not leading me into overwhelm. As long as I remember to do this, it will lead me. It can actually be something that calms my nervous system because it's giving me back space. It's giving me control, and it's pairing with me as a real team member. And that's something that your course and your coaching has done for me. So very excited to bring this into the community, and yeah, so appreciative of the work that you're doing. Anything like else that you would say just for people who are exploring AI, and some of the last words you would share with us?
Yeah, I think just, taking a deep breath in and realizing the fact that the people who are worrying about this are the people who are at the forefront of it. The fact that the people who aren't worrying about it are probably the ones who need to worry. And the people who are worrying about it are probably okay. That's like, I guess there's a phrase that's like, only the paranoid survive. So if you are overwhelmed, you can kind of take that as a good sign. Take a deep breath in. Something that just in a small way that helps me is if I've done something that day or even that week that compounds, like we talked about, that we've built a small, even a very simple workflow. If I've done something that I'm going to be using, in the long term, ideally, that's enough for me to kind of feel like I'm making progress with this stuff, and to really fight that overwhelm. I even created a document where I look back at my week. What did I achieve this week that will compound? And just looking at that gives me a feeling that there is some solid ground here, even though it feels like the earth is shifting underneath us. We are moving and we are adapting along with these things. That's been super helpful for me. Obviously, I'd love it if you join the course and we can dive deep into all this stuff. But if you take one thing away from, our discussion here, that might be something to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And at First Home IQ, our mission is, of course, bringing financial literacy to the next generation. But we're doing that through equipping housing professionals to be leaders in education. And I don't think that you can really do that effectively at scale without utilizing AI in today's world. So we're excited to bring this education to the community. And thank you so much for having a conversation with us. I'll drop the link to join if you are joining with us in this course. Casey is donating half of the registration fee back to First Home IQ. So we're so appreciative of that and excited to get started. Thank you so much, Casey.
Awesome. Thanks for talking with me today.